people from the Ruby community. It was kind of like space indented, so there's no requirement for semicolons and colons. The SCSS is what really got it more famous among people who are familiar with CSS, because you can basically take like an existing CSS file, rename it to .scss, and it'll be completely valid. So, and then you can sort of refactor that into SASS and get working on it. And one thing you notice in most SASS files would be like, when you start off, I just want to quickly check if everyone's okay with the font size. Yeah, so usually you start with a file, with a single file that just does this, that imports other SASS files into it. So this file is called manifest file, and for example, in libraries like Foundation, you just have like an entire set of files that. So this really helps in separating out different modules in my website. So if I have I have a button component, or I have like a drop-down component, or I have tables, I just give each of those their own separate file and basically keep it separate from all the other CSS. So it really helps in separating those files out into particles. So these are all beginning with an underscore. So which means they're not going to convert into an actual CSS file, but they're just going to be imported into another SCSS file. And the only file over here that's going to get compiled is input.scss. And so in order to compile this, you basically need to come here and say SASS SCSS. So I'm running this from the root of the folder. Okay. So I'm running this from the root of the folder. The ---- watch is really useful because it just looks for any changes I do in the SCSS file and automatically starts the compilation. So basically go look into the input.scss file and any dependencies, all of these files over here, and if any of them change, compile that and put it as an output in my CSS directory. So once we get that started, it says SASS is watching for changes, and you can basically allow to do whatever you want inside of the SASS file. The first thing that I would want to touch upon is like variables. So I generally start any project by like defining the colors that I'll be using in the project. So you can ignore the right-hand side for now. It's just for convenience to show how to compile output is. So I start with this section here. So it's sort of like, okay, within this project, these are the colors that I'm going to use. I'm probably not going to use all of these colors, but they're just there anyway because they're harmonious and they go well with each other. So that's sort of like defining a palette over there. And then these are the project-specific colors that I'm defining. I'm sort of abstracting that away from saying, okay, in the future, if my primary color is going to change from blue to black, I can still go change this to show black, but it's not really confusing because now it says blue, but it means black. So this is a way to avoid that problem. So I have like primary color, secondary color, what's the base color, and some color for highlighting. And the other thing is SASS works really well with colors, so it has like inbuilt functions. So if sometimes you just want to like, okay, I want a lighter shade of this color or a darker shade of this color, and you can just use these built-in functions over here and say, okay, lighten yellow by 10%, or darken it by 10%. So just to show you how that will look, I have these. So this is the default yellow that I'm using in the project, and then this is the lighter, 10% lighter version. So it's super useful if you want to like just spin off different colors with just one set. And there's also this really cool function that SASS can do, which is it can add colors. So if I give it two different X colors and add it, so it will separate out the red component, the blue component, and the green component, and do color functions on addition on that, and then it will produce a color output that's equivalent to that output. The other part of SASS that I want to touch upon is nesting. So if you have like a set of properties that are like built on top of, say for example, font, right? Font has a font family property, it has weight, size, color. You can basically just say font : and then start nesting inside of that. So you say, so instead of just writing font family, font size, and weight, it sort of helps ease the process of everything. The other really useful feature of the color part is when you're doing RGBA, right? If you're doing regular CSS, you have to give it X values over here for each of the components. So even if I'm going black, I have to split that into X components and then provide the other part of it. But within SASS, it gets really easy. I can do this. I can just type the colors in, if it's a valid CSS color. Or if I have a variable, so if I have like a dollar there, and then I just go everywhere, and then I can use that variable over here and then do the conversion. So it does this. So this is really useful when working with colors in SASS. So the next thing we're going to see is a little bit of nesting in SASS. So mostly when I work with files, it's like, okay, let's put all the variables of this particular module. Let's say I'm building the navigation module, and let's put all the variables that correspond to this particular module over here on right and top. So if you need to make any changes, you just go to that portion of it and make changes. And suddenly you want to do navigation, but you just don't get any changes to work. And everything else is built on top of that. Okay. So I'll just quickly show you how this gets compiled and output over here. So this is the output section. So instead of having to, like in CSS, you would have to do like nav primary and then grade individual, nav primary, grade individual, grade individual. So SASS basically allows you to nest things within curly brackets. So this is like the primary scope of this, and then anything under this would, so grade individual would get compiled as the parent grade individual basically. And you can also refer the parent using like an attribute. So let's say you have this link over here, and then you want to like that over, right? And then color is light. So the and colon over is like super useful if you want to do like different states for the same item. So you can basically refer the parent using the ampersand. And with the latest version of SASS, they have sort of modified that to a point where you can also use that within the name. This was impossible in previous versions, but now if I do and primary for a button, so it'll just basically copy this word selector and throw it away. So that would be here. So it says button icon primary, right? We're going to say I just say and icon. So you can basically use the ampersand to copy the parent. If you're familiar with methodologies for CSS like DM or SMAX, so this kind of comes really handy when you're trying to do that. Okay. The other thing I want to quickly show you guys is maps, which is like a new data type. It's similar to a Ruby hash or a dictionary in Python. So it's basically key value tags, and so this is one unit. So this is like this whole thing is one data type, and within it has like key value tags. So it's like box primary and then color primary. So what is the use of this, right? Why would someone do this instead of writing that directly into the code? So I can do a each loop that says, okay, go take this map over here, iterate over the key and value components, create one class. And so this is interpolation for variables. So basically just print this over here. And I'm doing hash and curly brackets. So it'll create dot box primary for me, and then it will say background color is dollar. So this is the code that basically results in me creating all these boxes over here. So with background colors to that. So what it does is, so this will result in this set of code page. So okay, so the advantage you can see maintenance wise is, suppose tomorrow I need to add another class to this. I don't have to copy paste something. I can just go and add an additional value to the map, and I'll add this. So anything I'm building off of this map will have access to that new set of data. The other thing is managing breakpoints in a similar fashion. Let me see if I have this. So the same case, right? For breakpoints, I basically build a map so you can see how this becomes useful. So suppose in the future you have a new device that you need to respond to. You basically define the new values over here, and then you can use that new breakpoint within your code. So and here's a mixin. Right? Mixin is, if you want to use any sort of repetitive code, you create a mixin out of it, you abstract that out into a mixin so that you can use it. So I'm basically creating a mixin that outputs a media player. Right? First, it takes one value, which is a breakpoint, and then it checks my map over here to see if the value that you've given me matches one of the values that I have over here. Right? And that is a built-in function called map as p. So if you give me a valid breakpoint and you give me some decent content on how you want to respond to that, then I basically give you a media query and then replicate the content. So here's an example of how to use that. So there's a box. So the behavior is this. So if I have the largest string, it becomes full width. And if I have the smallest string, it's restricted to 50 pixels. So that's the behavior. And within the CSS, like if I spend a little amount of time building a library, then people who are working in my project don't even know how to do even media queries. They just need to say, okay, that includes respond to small devices. So the small here is basically a min-width media query. So anything above small will get with 100%. So if you go to your, so anything above 767, that thing becomes 100%. Yeah. So mixins can also be, people used to use mixins a lot for like render prefixing, but I kind of recommend using something like auto prefixer as a post compilation step for your CSS. So this is pretty much where I use mixins. So another really interesting use case for SASS is like Z-index management. So if you work in a project where any developer just go into like Z-index 9999 and then they just want that to be on top of everything else. So this is sort of like a really cool tips that I found on the internet to manage the Z-index value. So there's like stuff that needs to be below everything, and then there's like the regular content, and then there's like drop down which needs to be pretty much your navigation item which needs to be on top of your content. If you have a sticky nav or something, and then the content of that drop down, and then there's like another level that says modal content, and then you have something that you basically want to override everything else. So within my CSS, so whenever I need to use the Z-index value, I don't like key in a number, but instead I just say, okay, here's a function I wrote, it's called Z, and then here's the value that I want for that. So this is the button for me right now has the same Z-index value as a drop down. So it basically come and look for a function called Z. SASS has a function that allows you to define your own functions. It takes the parameter that you pass through and basically iterates through this list value and hunts for that particular value that you sent. So in this case, I gave it like drop down, so that's like 1, 2, and 3 index, right? So Z index gets compiled. So this is super useful because tomorrow if you have to put something in between these two, right, then that gets really easy to manage. Like instead of having like 9999 written all over and you're just fighting to override that. So that's kind of really basic intro that I wanted to cover tonight. So we can like open for questions that you guys have specific interest in. And I'm planning to like build on this in the future sessions, so if you're interested, please do it. Yes, please.
Is there a reason you settle on SASS versus the QR repository?
So I never tried Stylus, but I did start with less actually because that was coming with Bootstrap. But I found SASS to be way more stable and it has like a lot more features than Less. Less has a couple of things that are very different from SASS, but I don't find use for that kind of stuff like that. By the time they came out of that, I'd already integrated with SASS and I don't see nothing like it. Like the only reason Less really is still there is because of Bootstrap. Like that's nothing. Stylus I haven't tried, but